You sleep in a house you will never own. You drive a car that belongs to the bank. You work all week, and by Wednesday the money is already gone. You call this normal. Your grandparents called it survival. The Romans called it exactly what it was: controlled poverty. This is not about being broke. This is about being comfortable enough to stay quiet. That is the trick. That is the blade they have been sharpening for 2,000 years. Let me show you the blueprint. In ancient Rome, the ruling class faced a problem. Slaves were expensive to feed and dangerous to keep. They rebelled. They burned villas. They killed masters in the night. So Rome invented something better than slavery. They invented the wage, not enough to build wealth, just enough to survive until tomorrow. They called the workers who lived this way proletariat. The only thing they could produce was more workers, more children to feed the machine. The system did not need chains. It needed rent and grain prices. Keep the masses one meal away from desperation and they will never have time to revolt. They will be too busy working. This brings us to stage 1, the lure of stability. The trap always starts with a promise. In medieval Europe, they called it tenancy. The Lord would offer you a plot of land. You could farm it. You could build a home. You could raise a family. All you had to do was give him half of everything you grew. It sounded fair. It sounded like security. What they did not tell you was that the land would never be yours. Your children would inherit the same deal. And their children. And theirs. You were signing away the future in exchange for the present. The system called this feudalism. The people living in it called it life. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution. Factories rise in Manchester and Pittsburgh. Black smoke fills the sky. Thousands leave the countryside for the cities. They are told the wage will set them free. No more depending on harvests. No more praying for rain. Just show up. Do the work. Get paid. It sounds like progress. It sounds like control over your own life. But here is the part they don't teach you in school. Stage 2. The dependency. The factory wage was calculated with surgical precision. Economists in London and New York sat in rooms with ledgers and did the math. How little can we pay a man before he dies? How little can we pay him before he quits? They found the number. It was called the subsistence wage. Enough to keep you alive, enough to keep you showing up, not enough to save, not enough to escape. The system needed you, weak enough to stay, but strong enough to work. They built entire economic theories around this. They wrote books about it. They taught it in universities. The goal was never to lift you up. The goal was to keep you running in place. The factory owners knew something crucial. A man with savings is dangerous. A man with 6 months of wages in his pocket can walk away. He can say no. He can demand better. So they made sure you never got 6 months ahead. They paid you weekly, sometimes daily. They built company towns where the rent consumed half your wage. They opened company stores where the prices consumed the rest. You worked in their factory, you slept in their housing, you bought from their stores, the money went in a circle, and you never touched freedom. And then they added the next layer. Stage 3. The illusion of ownership. By the early 20th century, workers started to get angry. Strikes spread across Europe and America. Unions formed. Guillotines were still fresh in the memory of the ruling class. So they made a deal. You can own a home, you can own a car, you can own a future. All you need to do is borrow. The banks will lend you the money, you just have to pay it back. With interest. Over 30 years. They called it the American dream. They could have called it the longest leash ever invented. The math was beautiful. A man with a mortgage does not strike. A man with a car payment does not protest. A man with debt does not risk his job. You are not working for yourself anymore. You are working for the bank. And the bank owns the government. And the government writes the laws. The circle closes. You think you are free because you can choose which car to finance. You think you are free because you can choose which house to rent from the landlord or borrow from the lender. But the choice was always which chain fits most comfortably around your neck. The genius was in the marketing. They stopped calling it debt. They called it investment. They stopped calling it bondage. They called it building equity. They took the same trap that kept medieval peasants on the land and wrapped it in paperwork and pride. Now you defend the system that enslaves you. Now you call the man without a mortgage irresponsible. The prisoner mocks the free man for not having chains. This is where the system turns deadly. Stage 4. The inflation trap. They print more money. They call it stimulus. They call it growth. What it really does is erase your savings. The price of milk doubles. The price of rent doubles. Your wage increases by 5%. You are told this is normal. You are told this is the economy. What you are not told is that inflation is a tax on the poor. The rich hold assets, real estate, stocks, gold. These things rise with inflation. You hold cash. You hold a paycheck. These things dissolve. Every year you work the same hours and buy less food. Every year the treadmill speeds up and you fall further behind. This is not an accident. This is policy. The central banks of the world coordinate this. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England. They sit in rooms with marble floors and crystal chandeliers, and they decide how much your labor is worth. They decide how much your time is worth. They do this by controlling the money supply. And you have no vote. You have no voice. You have no seat at the table. You just watch your rent increase and your savings evaporate, and you wonder why you can never get ahead. Your grandfather bought a house on a single income. He worked 40 hours and supported a family. He retired with a pension. You work 50 hours and cannot afford rent. You have 2 incomes in your household and still drown. You will never retire. They tell you it is because you are lazy. Because you buy coffee. Because you refuse to sacrifice. The truth is the math changed. They moved the goalposts while you were sleeping. But here is the deepest cut. Stage 5. The debt spiral. You need a car to get to work. You need credit to buy the car. You need a good credit score to get credit. You need to borrow money to build a credit score. You need a job to pay back the money. You need the car to get to the job. The loop is closed before you even start. And if you miss one payment, the system punishes you. Your score drops. Your interest rate rises. Now you are paying more for the same debt. The hole gets deeper. The system is designed to forgive the billion-dollar bailout and destroy the man who missed his car payment. This is not a conspiracy. This is a business model. The banks make more money when you are in debt than when you are free. The landlords make more money when you rent forever than when you buy. The corporations make more money when you live paycheck to paycheck. Because you cannot afford to quit. You cannot afford to negotiate. You cannot afford to walk away. Your desperation is their profit margin. Your fear of homelessness is their quarterly earnings report. They even turned your education into debt. You are told you need a degree to succeed. So you borrow 50,000, 80,000, 100,000. You are 18 years old and you sign papers you do not understand for a future you cannot guarantee. And the debt never dies. You cannot bankrupt out of it. It follows you until you pay or until you die. Sometimes both. This is indentured servitude with a graduation ceremony. Stage 6. The comfort that kills. And here is the final trick. The system gives you just enough. You have a phone. You have internet. You have streaming services and delivery food and credit cards that let you pretend you are not broke. You are not starving in the streets. You are not sleeping in the cold. You are comfortable. And comfort is the most dangerous drug ever invented. Your great-grandfather would have fought for a better life. He would have marched. He would have organized. He would have burned down the factory if they cheated him. But you have a couch. You have a screen. You have just enough to sedate the anger. The system learned from the revolutions. It learned that you do not need to crush the workers. You just need to give them Wi-Fi and call it freedom. They learned that a distracted population is easier to control than an oppressed one. So they gave you entertainment. They gave you social media. They gave you the illusion of connection while isolating you completely. You do not know your neighbors. You do not organize with your coworkers. You do not build community. You scroll, you watch, you consume. And while you are distracted, they raise the rent again. This brings us to today. Right now, this moment. You are living in stage 5 or stage 6. You are working a job that barely covers rent. You are financing a car you will pay for twice over by the time you own it. You are saving for a down payment that increases faster than your savings. You are one medical emergency away from bankruptcy, one layoff away from eviction. And you call this middle class, you call this normal, you call this life. The numbers have changed, but the leash is exactly the same length. In Rome, they gave you grain. In medieval Europe, they gave you a plot. In industrial England, they gave you a wage. Today, they give you credit and call it opportunity. The mechanics are identical. Keep you working, keep you hoping, keep you one step away from disaster so you never have time to look up and see the cage. And the cage is generational now. Your parents could not escape. You will not escape. Your children are already trapped before they take their first loan for college. The debt starts at 18. The interest compounds for decades. By the time they are 30, they are already 15 years behind. This is not failure. This is design. The system does not want you to be poor. Poor people riot. The system wants you to be comfortable enough to stay quiet and desperate enough to keep working. That balance is called the middle class. You are the buffer between the rich and the revolution. You are the insulation that keeps the machine running. You are not the beneficiary. You are the product. Once you see this, you cannot unsee it. Every commercial is a command. Every promotion is a postponement. Every raise is an illusion when inflation runs faster. You are told to work hard, to be grateful, to play the game. But the game was rigged before you sat down at the table. The house always wins because the house writes the rules and prints the money and owns the board. The middle class was never meant to be a destination. It was meant to be a waiting room, a place where you sit patiently, believing that success is just around the corner. Just one more promotion, just one more year, just one more sacrifice. But the corner never comes. The horizon keeps moving, and you spend your entire life chasing a finish line that does not exist. So what do? You start by seeing the trap. You stop calling debt normal. You stop calling rent security. You stop mistaking survival for success. You learn the history they do not teach. You understand that this system is not natural. It is not inevitable. It was built by people, and it can be dismantled by people. But first you have to wake up. You have to stop defending the cage. You have to stop believing that your struggle is your fault. The system wants you to blame yourself. It wants you exhausted and ashamed and isolated. Because the moment you look around and realize everyone else is drowning too, that is when you become dangerous. If this opened your eyes to the cage you are living in, subscribe. Because in the next video, we dismantle the rest of the illusion.